So what is the New Testament? We're busy looking at what the Bible is. To watch the first two videos about the Bible in general and the Old Testament, click on the links in the video right here or the links in the description below. Today, however, we're going to be looking at what the New Testament is. So what is it? Well, it's the second part of the Bible and it contains the books from Matthew through to Revelations. It was originally written in Greek and it takes place around the Mediterranean from Israel to Italy. It starts with the coming of Christ and ends with a prophetic warning of the trials of being a Christian, but also with a promise that it's worth it. The New Testament is divided into two main categories. The first being the Gospels, which are the first 4 books and each tell the story of Jesus Christ and his time here on earth. There are 4 because they each tell the story from a slightly different angle with their own unique emphasis and stories. Think of it like witnesses in a trial. The more witnesses that tell the same story, the better chance you have to prove something is true. So the Gospels are books written by 4 different witnesses, and they're written to prove that Jesus Christ is Lord. As you can imagine, these 4 books are the most precious books in the Bible to Christians, and most decisions that churches and believers make are weighed against the teachings of the Gospels. The next category is the letters. The letters are exactly what they say. They're letters written by apostles to churches that they were mentoring. The letters contain many guidelines about how to be a Christian and how to be a church. Many of the letters are answers to questions that the new believers in young churches had, and though we don't have the questions themselves, we can deduce what they were by reading the answers. Now, before we carry on with the New Testament, I have to quickly explain the terms disciple and apostle. Disciple literally means follower. So Jesus' disciples were his followers, and although we refer to 12 disciples, he actually had many besides the 12 that he called to follow him. Even today, if you are striving to live like Jesus, you can call yourself a disciple of Jesus. Apostles were the disciples of Jesus who knew him personally or had met him, who went out into the world to grow the church after Jesus' resurrection. They were the 12 disciples plus a select few who knew Jesus well enough to be called apostles. Now that we've cleared that up, there are 2 books that don't fit into any categories in the New Testament, and they are Acts and Revelations. Acts, although being put in the letters category and although it is a letter, is more like a continuation of the Gospels. It's the only book apart from the Gospels that tells a historic account rather than just addressing something. Acts tells the story of the apostles and the emergence of the church after Jesus' ascension. It's unlike the other letters in that it never answers questions, solves problems, or addresses issues, but purely just tells a story. It was also written by Luke as the second part of his Gospels, so although being a letter to a man called Theophilus, it's not actually like the other letters. Revelations is also a letter and it is placed with the other letters, but upon reading it you'll immediately understand why it's different. Although it is a letter, it is written to 7 churches where the other letters are only written to 1 each. It's also a letter from Jesus Christ through John. And it's also a prophetic letter containing many warnings, promises, and advice for being a Christian in the time until Jesus comes again. So although it is technically a letter, its uniqueness in both format and message actually means that it doesn't quite fit in with the rest. Together, these Gospels and letters make up the part of the Bible which is unique to Christianity and which is core to our faith. It tells of the coming of Christ, of his teachings, of his sacrifice to save us from death itself, of his followers' work to begin a movement that would later be called the church, and it contains the teachings and advice without which we cannot begin to know how to follow Christ. And that is what the New Testament is.